Sri Jogesh Pratap Singh ji, and the anchor for making my day. Such kind words in the morning. I'm really humbled. I just try to do my duty wherever I am, and I try to put in my best. I give my 100%, and that's all. No more, no less. So I gratefully acknowledge the kind words showered on me by both of you. Now, let me tell you, I just couldn't have said no to this webinar because it talks of education. When one of your friends, your esteemed colleague, approached me and asked me to kind of appear in this, I couldn't have said no because it was all about education. And education is something which is the backbone of society. And for that matter, I am emotionally attached with one assignment that I have done in my career of 25 years in the Indian Administrative Service, and that is Secretary School Education and Secretary Higher Education. I can never thank God enough for having put me in these two assignments when I was in the IAS. I have benefited a lot. I have learned a lot from everybody with whom I have come across, whether the members of Teachers Association or the students. I have learned a lot and I have really felt very much enriched. My dear friends, having jumped to politics, having jumped to a very different platform, wherever I go, people throw different kinds of questions at me. Sometimes there are bouquets, sometimes there are brickbats. There are hundreds of questions. But one question deeply touched me, which came from a student of class 12th in a school in Bhubaneswar. He just asked me, Madam, you have been in the IAS, now you are in politics. What do you think is the most important, most significant nation building activity? And you know, I took just 30 seconds to respond, and I don't know how I responded. I just spoke from my heart and I said, a particular period in a class, whether it is for 45 minutes or 50 minutes or 1 hour, when the teacher interacts with the student, whether in a school or in a college, is the most important nation building activity. Whatever we may do, you or me, anybody, I think this is the most important work that is done for the society, for the nation. It's extremely important for all of us to ensure that this 45 minutes or this 50 minutes is power-packed and is able to deliver the maximum. There is tremendous output of this 45 minutes. I think all of us, whether we are in the policymakers group or whether we are the executives, whether we are the students, I think all of us in the nation must think on this line. We have to really improve the quality of delivery and maximize the output of this 45 minutes. My dear friends, 4th August 2009, right? 2010, 4th August 2010, the Right to Education Act was passed by the Parliament. After a lot of debate, the then UPA government was there and the act was passed. We are one of the 135 countries which actually announced to the world that education was a fundamental right. We were not just the first one. We were among 135 countries. And I'm really proud of the fact that I was also in the consultative committee when the Right to Education Act was being drafted by the Ministry of School Education and the Ministry of Higher Education at Government of India level. Now, I'm very grateful to the Vice Chancellor Yogesh Pratap Singh ji, very rightly and very beautifully and very cogently, he has put before us the salient features of the Right to Education Act. We are all aware of what it was. 10 years have passed and we are celebrating this decade of the implementation of Right to Education Act. I'm talking to you not as a person belonging to a party opposed to the UPA. I'm talking to you as a citizen of India. I'm talking to you as one of you who is not involved in any kind of politics. We are all citizens of India, and as I told you, education is extremely important. Before I start, I would like to say 3-4 lines of Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. You know, education is just not learning by rote. Education is not just the learning of 3 letters. Education, he said, education to be complete must be humane. It must include not only the training of intellect, but also the refinement of heart and discipline of spirit. We have to ensure that through education, we are able to transform human beings into holistic personalities. That is what education is all about. It is not just training of intellect. It is much beyond that. My dear friends, right to education, as you know, it focused completely on the age group of 6 to 14, free and compulsory education, no detention, we are all aware of. There was tremendous focus on teacher-pupil ratio, on infrastructure creation, on teachers training. All these things were part of the Right to Education Act, and they are being implemented. Now, 10 years down the line, as a citizen of India, let's ask ourselves, where are we? Where are we? I just heard the Vice Chancellor. He rightly mentioned that the upper primary enrollment went up by 19.43% or say 20%. I entirely agree. Now, there is a difference between enrollment and retention. Whether we were able to retain, whether there is a way of tracking the retention. I was going by some of the DICE reports, you know, the District Survey Education Report. I was going through some of the DICE reports. There is absolutely no way of tracking the retention part. Enrollment, yes, we have done phenomenally well in enrollment. Gross enrollment ratio has really gone up. And I tell you, it's 10 plus 2. Now, in the National Education Policy, we are talking of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. We are all aware of that. But at that point of time, it was 6 to 14, right? Right from class 1 to class 8. Gross enrollment ratio in the primary stage, right from class 1 to class 5, went up phenomenally high. Upper primary, 6 and 7 and 8, little less, but yes, 20% as we discussed right now. But the issue is retention. I will not like to dwell on the salient features. I would not like to be repetitive, but I would definitely like to point out certain issues. You know, at that point of time when I was Secretary of Education and I was sitting in one of the meetings with the government, and I had suggested that to ensure that in Odisha, all children who pass out from the Anganwadi centers, or rather who cross the Anganwadi center threshold, 6 years, 3 to 6 is Anganwadi preschool, you know that. So beyond 6 years, all of them should go to the nearest primary school. And it will be good if we have the Anganwadi center within the premises of a primary school. I hope you understand. The idea was all these children of Anganwadi centers go to the primary school. 100% enrollment in the primary school in class 1. And I'm really delighted to tell you that at that point of time, the government took my suggestion very positively. And thereafter, there was a time when all the Anganwadi centers in the state, thereafter, after our meeting and the decisions taken by the government, we started constructing the Anganwadi centers within the school premises. But the challenge was, after class 5, the upper primary, many of the places, the upper primary is not part of the primary. Upper primary would be some other building somewhere. There would be a strict dropout. Dropout rates went up, and the girls especially were the dropouts. They would not go to the upper primary school. That was the challenge. After 10 years, having looked at the infrastructure, tremendous infrastructure came up. You know, one of the salient features, very important salient feature I would say was, within every 1 kilometer radius of a habitation, there must be a primary school. right? And within a radius of 3 kilometers, there should be an upper primary school. I'll go just beyond that also, that's not the subject of discussion today. Under the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, within 5 kilometers radius, that is almost in one panchayat, there would be a high school also. So there, I tell you, the flip side of it, there was tremendous focus on infrastructure creation. And I, as Secretary Education, had been given the responsibility of ensuring that whatever money came from Government of India was spent properly, and within that 1 kilometer and 3 kilometer radius, we had schools everywhere. Mushrooming of schools, I must say. Mushrooming everywhere. Now, while doing that, I think it was an implementation flaw. I can look back now. The teachers were less. So the spread of teachers was very less. We had to recruit more number of teachers because we increased the number of buildings. And there was sparsely populated areas. I want you all to think through. Those who are listening to me, please think through. Please think through. I love these two words, think through. While I talk, you imagine, what am I saying? It's very easy to, mug up figures. It's very easy to, go through the salient features and to say the disadvantages and advantages. I want you all to think through. The teachers were less in number. Schools were many. And the schools were not equipped well enough. We had to have proper infrastructure within every school. Right? So these things were missing all through. And then we kept on, doing this MDM thing we brought in. We went for drinking water facilities. We went for additional classrooms. So I think all these things happened, but there was less focus on equipping these schools, the soft components. Unless and until, that is my very humble experience in these 25 years and even now in politics, all of us need to be very careful about both the components in anything that we do. Always there are two components in all our works. One is the hardware and the other is the software. We just can't focus on hardware and be content. We have to focus on the software too, the soft components. What are the soft components in education? If you ask me, hardware, yes, it's very easy to get. Very easy to get a laboratory, very easy to have a building done, very easy to have a pipe water supply or a tube well done, very easy to have some laboratory equipments, as I mentioned, blackboards done, teaching aid materials done. But yes, then what is a soft component? Soft component is the quality aspect of it. Whether the teachers have been properly trained, whether that 45 minutes is quality packed, whether the children are benefiting, whether we are able to communicate to the children what we want to communicate, whether there is holistic empowerment of children. What is education? Education is nothing but ensuring empowerment, ensuring capacitation. Education helps us to lead our life in a better manner. Right? So are we doing that? So for that matter, though there was focus on teachers training in right to education, it was not implemented in letter and spirit, whatever may be the reason. And one reason I can only say I could feel, because I was at the executing point, there was always this unnecessary tug of war between the center and the state governments. So state governments had to put in certain amount of funds. It was a centrally sponsored program. So naturally center giving and state giving. So center would give, then state would not give. Right? So this was the problem. So financial crunches actually marred the implementation part of it to a great extent. Number one. Number two, in the parliament also today, I keep telling, whenever a new bill comes to become an act by the passage in the both houses of the parliament, one major thing which I always say, much to the consternation, much to the disapproval of many of my colleagues, I always say it's very easy to pass bills. It's very easy to frame acts. It's very easy to frame regulations. The most important thing is whether we are able to implement these in the right manner. There is a plethora of laws, rules, regulations, acts. Are we able to do justice to them? The national education policy has come now. I'm very humbly informing you that I was kind of, part of the whole drafting process again. And we had to put in as member of parliament some of our suggestions in the parliament when this was kind of, taken up. Of course, this is a policy. This was not brought to the parliament for passage, but the suggestions of members of parliament had been. National education policy is a very ambitious one, tremendous focus on vocational education, tremendous focus on usage of technology, right? We are talking of artificial intelligence, we are talking of genetic engineering, we are talking of robotics, we are talking of genomics. Everything is there in the national education policy. You just go through that. It's a marvelous piece to read. As far as right to education is concerned, down the line, I have a feeling that the implementation part could have been better. After 10 years, I can only say that we did a lot as far as infrastructure was concerned. We did a lot as far as enrollment ratio increase was concerned. Cross enrollment ratio went up. We actually failed on the quality part of it. Have you seen the ASER reports? I always go through the ASER reports whenever it is published. Are we moving forward in the same manner as other countries are doing? I think there is a tremendous deficit somewhere, tremendous deficit. So I think instead of, and this NEP, let me tell you, I forgot to mention, this NEP has come after 34 years. The last one was 1986, the education policy. And now we have the new education policy now after 34 years. This particular government went back, talked about the last policy of 1986, and then now it has come up with the NEP, which is a wonderful document. And I entirely agree with Yogendra Pratap Singh ji that it all boils down to how well we implement it. Again, the center and state tug of war should not take place. Number one. Number two, there should not be paucity of funds anywhere, right? Friends, a very small thing. I'm just going away from the usual focusing on the right to education. I want you all to think through. Let's all be as innovative as possible, as innovative. Think out of the box. It's very easy to take an act or a policy and implement it in letter and spirit, 10 blackboards here, 2 classrooms there. That's not the way. That's not the way. Let's be slightly different, innovative. I'll just give you an example of what we did. It's never I in my case, it's always the team which is performing so very well. I have always been a part of a good team. I remember when we were implementing here in Orissa, one day we had been to Raigada district. Initially, I think 1 month of my joining as the secretary of the department. And suddenly the parents there, I have a wonderful, I love to interact with people. So I sat in one of the villages and I was talking to the women there. And I said, why don't you send your children to school? And they were very candid about it. They said, what do we get in school? Nothing is there. Our children go and come back. It's a dilapidated building. Our children don't like the look of the building. Friends, let me tell you, that very day in the evening, I had a special meeting, an emergency meeting with all the district functionaries of Raigada. We sat there and I asked them, what's this problem? Parents don't want to send their children to our school. We are giving them MDM. We have also started giving them textbooks. We are giving them free uniforms. What's the problem? That very day, one old person came and said, Madam, please make your schools attractive. And that was the answer I was looking for. Attractive. Anything which is attractive is something which makes us go there, isn't it? So what we did was, we tried to color our schools, paint our schools, bring all the tribal paintings of Odisha, make all the classrooms very beautiful out of the funds given by the government of India to each school headmaster. We started doing that all across the state. In the next 3-4 months, all schools